Beautiful British Columbia. It isn't just a slogan, it's reality. And arguably, few areas of the province are more beautiful than the forested coastline of this corner of Vancouver Island. Welcome to the riding of Esquimalt-Saanich-Sooke.
It's a diverse riding. It's folks who live in the South Island, all along sort of the west shore of our great community. And you're going to meet a range of folks there, older adults who've settled in this community many, many years ago, students, young people, families. You really are going to find a diversity of folks who call Esquimalt-Saanich-Sooke their home.
Dean Murdoch has been the mayor of Saanich for more than 2 years, but spent many years as a local councillor.
In Saanich, I think probably the biggest issues I hear about from folks is affordability, the cost of housing. I regularly hear from families that they're not able to find a place that is within their budget that meets their needs. We've got, I run into a family of 4 that's living in a one-bedroom basement suite.
But it's Donald Trump's on-again, off-again tariff threats that concern residents the most. The mountains of Washington state are a constant presence here. It's a 1.5-hour ferry ride to the U.S.
Definitely anxious about the changes. I do a lot of work with Canada up in the Yukon, and so I know things get reprioritized when there's changes in our government, and so that always kind of throws me off. And what's happening south of the border is how that impacts everything that we're doing up here is always of concern. So those are the things that are mostly on my mind.
I guess I'm mostly nervous, I think is like the right word, about everything that's been happening, especially as Ray said, south of the border. So I've been just kind of trying to take a step back from the news cycle in the moment.
We have no understanding one day to the next of how that's going to affect us. The interesting thing is that if you speak to the average constituent here today, they probably only see in the grocery store and that kind of, or if they had the idea to buy a new car, they're only being impacted indirectly that way.
Mayor Barbara Desjardins has been caring for her constituents for 17 years. She says the tariffs will directly affect Saanich.
We don't know how much further that's going to go. And certainly municipally, it may affect us in terms of tendering projects, and it certainly will affect in terms of our ability to provide housing. Any large buildings that have height are going to require steel, etc. We don't know one day to the next how that's going to impact.
People are concerned about the economic threats, the threats against our sovereignty, and how we stand together and weather through all of this. People care about their neighbors, the elders. There's also concerns of accessing housing. I've met a lot of young people that still live at home.
Maja Tait is the NDP candidate in this riding. She was the mayor of Sooke and a longtime councillor. She says the reasons for jumping into federal politics are deeply personal.
I know what it's like to be a wedge between 2 generations. My husband and I cared for my parents as their health failed until the end of their days. And I now have my 90-year-old disabled father-in-law living with us. At the same time, I'm raising a young son. So I'm well aware of the challenges in navigating our healthcare system, as well as the challenge of making ends meet to be able to afford the things that we need.
Maja Tait is hoping to replace former NDP MP Randall Garrison, who held the riding for 10 years.
Thank you all. It's been great to be a colleague of yours, and it's been an honor to serve my constituents and all Canadians.
Mr. Garrison served this riding since 2011. He's been a strong mentor, a respected leader within this community. I'm very grateful to have the opportunity to potentially succeed him in Ottawa. He's very supportive of me, as are many of his friends and community members. And so we have some great momentum because he really lit the path for me.
But historically, the riding was also a conservative stronghold.
In the daily interactions that I have, Residents are concerned about one another. They really believe in the work and are grateful for the work of the NDP. Thousands of residents here are benefiting from dental care as well as pharmacare, and we want to see expansion to those programs because we know across this country millions of Canadians it's impacting and have made their lives better.
You know, I've known Maja a long time. I think she's a fantastic person, a great leader, and I think she would make a great MP. I don't know what her chances are in the riding. I would say all bets are off. You know, I studied political science, and you see these once-in-a-generation elections where you see people making decisions about the party and candidate they're going to support that don't follow the trend in those ridings. People don't remain attached to the candidate that they've always voted for.
NDP won that last time by a good 42% of the vote.
Political scientist Professor Michael Prince agrees this race is wide open. Oh, by the way, that's not snow falling, but beautiful BC spring blossoms.
I think we start from scratch. This is a whole different kind of campaign and different races. I think the Liberals have got to like their chances that they might be able to actually win that seat. So we'll have to see who gets the turnout. And I've seen re-engaged Liberal grassroots here that I haven't seen for years. I mean, often the Liberals here are like an endangered species. They're just very few of them, and they don't even talk about who they are. But they're loud, they're proud, and they're feeling good about the candidates they've got in Esquimalt.
Firstly, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the Premier.
Stephanie McLean, a lawyer, served as Minister of the Status of Women in Rachel Notley's NDP government in Alberta.
Hi, sorry to bother you. I'm Stephanie McLean, the Liberal Party candidate for this area.
She's crossed over to British Columbia and the Liberals to run in Esquimalt-Saanich-Sooke. Why do you think you're the best person to lead this riding?
Well, I have the experience as someone who served in government, in cabinet, in an NDP government. I know that it takes someone who has that level of experience to be able to see a community through hard times. And right now we're facing some of the hardest times this country has ever faced with the threats from Donald Trump on our sovereignty and our economy. So I know that I can bring that experience to the table and be able to be a really effective voice for the residents of Esquimalt-Saanich-Sooke.
McLean says because of the Trump tariff threats, people in this riding are worried about affordability.
Everyone is watching their pocketbooks more closely and trying to make ends meet. So affordability is an issue everywhere. You know, and folks want to be assured that there's somebody that's at the helm that's going to be able to ensure that we're going to be able to get through these rough waters together and come out for the better.
She says she believes the Liberal leader will make it happen.
He's made commitments to make their lives more affordable by providing more housing on military bases. That's one example, but he's also committed to building more housing. He's made a commitment to build more houses than this country has since World War II. You know, he recognizes that we're essentially in an economic war here. These are war times, and measures of that nature are required.
McLean mentions the military. That's one way this riding is unique. It houses the Canadian Forces Naval Base.
You know, we have Department of National Defense all around the region, but a large contingency, because they couldn't afford to live here, live either north of the Malahat or in the West Shore. There is, again, a very narrow route to get here. We have something like 7,000 people come to the base every day, and they go home every day. And with very little option for getting in and out, and helping them in terms of their housing would be significant in terms of a way for the federal government to assist our specific riding and the West Coast.
Professor Justin Wilshire of UVic says the base could definitely affect the vote.
The armed forces personnel and a lot of the support personnel, the civilian contractors, are often more in favor of the Conservative Party, though there's quite a mix there. I think that they have found that certain negotiations with the Harper Conservative government did leave a bad taste in some people's mouths, but typically speaking, those who work on the base and live in that riding may be more inclined to vote for the Conservative candidate who has some green bona fides. Some people have accused him of being a parachute candidate, so it'll be interesting to see. I think that riding is probably very much a toss-up at this point.
The Conservative candidate, Grant Cool, is an aerospace engineer and lifelong entrepreneur with a PhD from the University of Toronto. He was named by Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre to the consternation of others vying for the nomination, and despite not living in the riding, he declined an interview with CPAC. Running for the Green Party is Ben Homer-Dixon. He's 20 years old and a student at the University of Victoria. We caught up with him at his campaign launch. Why does Canada need the Green Party in the House of Commons?
That's a phenomenal question, because it's been something I've been dealing with a lot of people who are more inclined to vote strategically, especially in this election. And my main argument against that has been that Greens are absolutely necessary in Parliament, because, well, you've probably seen this with a lot of the major parties. They've been so focused on issues surrounding the economy and the United States and the ongoing trade war, or is it still ongoing? They paused them recently. I don't know what's up and down anymore. But they've been so focused on those issues, and to be fair, they're serious issues, that other issues like climate change especially, have basically been afterthoughts, barely even considered. And that's really concerning to me, because it's important. Just because we have other priorities doesn't mean climate change as an issue is going to go away. And I think that's why we need Greens, because Greens are Parliament's moral compass. Hang on, just need to...
I know you're just on your phone. Hey.
No, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Great.
Green Party leader Elizabeth May has nothing but praise for this young candidate.
What we really want is people who aren't headed for career politics, have ambitions to do other things to help their country, but fundamentally being a good member of Parliament is being of service to your community. And Ben Homer-Dixon will be that. At 20 years old, he already is more knowledgeable, more articulate, and understands the world better than I'd say more than half of my colleagues in Parliament, and that's an understatement. He's extraordinary.
I think we're going to hear a lot more about strategic voting. And we're also going to hear about the Green Party that's getting squeezed out, even in that riding where they didn't do too badly, even they were a distant fourth. But this is boiling down to, nationally at least, a two-party race, and Conservative and the Liberals. Here, though, of course, this is a strong traditional territory for the NDP.
Well, that's the riding of Esquimalt-Saanich-Sooke, but there's another interesting tight race happening right next door in Saanich-Gulf Islands. Serene, nature-loving, and bohemian are just some of the words used to describe the people of British Columbia's Gulf Islands. Along with a piece of Saanich on the peninsula of Vancouver Island, this is a very spread-out riding.
Only good things to say about this one.
A longtime member of Parliament and party leader is hoping to hold on to her seat here. The Green Party's Elizabeth May. Big question, why are you running again?
I have work to do. I have the enormous privilege and honor of knowing how to be the most effective member of Parliament in Parliament. I'm not going to stop. There's work to do. I'm a grandmother. I've got a 5-month-old granddaughter. I want to make sure the climate crisis is solved and she doesn't have to face the kind of affordability issues young people face these days. There's things to do, and I know how to do them.
For 14 years, Elizabeth May has been a constant and familiar presence in Saanich-Gulf Islands. But could voters be shifting away from the fourth party now that the Trump tariffs have turned this election campaign on its head?
Every election, fear-based voting is something that seizes people. It doesn't change. Fear-based voting was really a factor when I first ran here in 2011 and won, because I was running against a cabinet minister in Stephen Harper's cabinet. So Gary Lunn had been a member of Parliament here for 14 years himself, and beyond that, the riding had been conservative with one exception for 20 years. So don't forget that. May 2nd, 2011, we had 75% voter turnout in Saanich-Gulf Islands. The people who usually voted other ways started thinking about it, and somehow, the votes coalesced around people turning out and electing me as the first Green MP.
Certainly, I think that she is the presumptive favorite. There are predictions that she could lose as people move toward the Liberals in that riding. The Conservative candidate is quite strong, and historically Conservatives have won in that riding, but I think there are also a lot of people who are looking to vote against the Conservatives and vote strategically.
People will stop and think and realize, right, this is another two-way race between Elizabeth for the Greens and the Conservatives, who are always nipping at my heels and second place. And that means that if people want to make sure that this riding doesn't go Conservative, they have to vote Green.
So it's not a three-way race?
No, it isn't at all.
I'm Cathie Ounsted, the Conservative candidate in the riding.
Okay, I know
Yeah, nice to meet you. We're just going to the dog park.
But Conservative candidate Cathie Ounsted feels this time the pendulum has swung back to the Conservatives. She says constituents are looking to her to be the next MP for Saanich-Gulf Islands.
I can bring change. I can bring funding into our community that we haven't had in the last 14 years, which is one of the reasons that I stepped up to be a candidate. Our needs are great here, obviously, from a fiscal, financial perspective. Our economy needs improving, and as that improves, then our services can improve. So how are you feeling about the political climate in our country these days?
Well, to be brutally honest, my opinion is that the issue is Trump vis-a-vis whatever's going on in our country.
And what are you hearing at the door regarding the Trump tariffs?
People are concerned, and then, the Conservative Party is coming back with its plan for counter tariffs, and then the revenues from the counter tariffs will then go to the businesses affected by the tariffs to help keep their doors open and their employees employed. So we're explaining that to folks, and every day the political climate is changing so quickly. I have to be super honest. Just the reactionary to the U.S. and our own election that's ensuing at the moment. So every day the political climate is changing. So where 2 weeks ago the top concern they had was tariffs and the U.S., they're still concerned, and they haven't given up on that concern, but they're still going back to their grassroots of what they're really concerned about, and that's our public safety here in our communities, our health care, just all the things that we just really, really need to focus on to improve in this country.
And why do you think the residents here would be ready to bring back the Conservatives?
I think they've been ready for a long time, truthfully. I think there's been voter apathy in the years past. And we're ready for actual strong fiscal policies that can evoke change, rather than a single focused party that is focused on just one element of our society.
You're talking about the Greens.
I am, yes. They have very green initiatives, but any functioning, regular, responsible political party has green initiatives in their policies. So to only have and a focus on green policies doesn't do any justice to the other sectors of our economy and our riding that we need to make sure are fully functioning for our residents. And I would say the Conservative Party is not losing its appetite for the environment. However, we need more than just that. We need a healthy economy. We need a government that can stand up to the U.S. at the moment with the tariffs and counter tariffs and everything. We need more, and we're not getting what we need from our current Member of Parliament in this riding, in my opinion.
But Elizabeth May maintains her party has a fully fleshed out platform, one that includes environmental issues, but so much more.
We're looking at how do we enhance and expand our public health care system? How do we protect Canadians from the wild repercussions of whatever is ahead? What anybody wants to see, what citizens want to see in a time of chaos, is that somebody sensible and calm and thoughtful is in leadership. We're working on our budget to go with our electoral platform, and we're conscious of making reasonable projections. I mean, how does anybody make a reasonable projection Well, you don't know what Trump is going to do next. You do know, and I think we're clear as Canadians, and I love the effort of Team Canada, which we as federal party leaders in opposition and government, we're pulling together a lot before the election to say, make sure the message is clear to Trump that Canada is united and we're not going to back down.
But Professor Prince feels May well lose her seat this time.
Well, that's going to be a national story. I mean, here's someone who's been a major player in the green politics of this country. But I think, you know, this will be her 5th election. She's been leader on and off several times. I think there's a quiet mood of time for a change. And, you know, I've got no scientific poll on that, but on the street talking to people, there's a sense almost of it's time for a shift there. And it's not any kind of critique of her. I think there's a lot of respect and even affection for Elizabeth May in the riding. But this is a historic election, and it's almost as if it's time to look for a voice that would represent in Ottawa, whether that's Conservative. I mean, it could be a good 4-way race. You know, it might be one of the true 4-way races in the country where Green, NDP, Conservatives, and Liberals all have good candidates.
This candidate feels he has a strong shot.
Well, my name is David Beckham, and I am the Liberal candidate for Saanich-Gulf Islands, the most beautiful place in the world. And I want to represent this riding because I believe in Mark Carney, I believe in the Liberal Party, and because I love the people of this riding and want to represent them in Ottawa.
There hasn't been a Liberal in this area for quite a few years. What
Yes.
makes you think you can unseat a 14-year incumbent?
Well, this riding very nearly went Liberal in 2008, very close, within a few hundred votes. But in 2011, those Liberals went to the Green Party due to a level of disaffection with the Liberal Party at the time. And after 14 years, the Green candidate has a combination of loyalty and incumbency. But what we're discovering is that those Liberals want to vote for Mark Carney, quite emphatically want to vote for Mark Carney. And if they return to the Liberal Party, they could very well result in sending me to Ottawa. We're certainly fighting for all Canadians and certainly for the people of Saanich-Gulf Islands.
Beckham says, like his opponent, Elizabeth May, he has a deep interest in environmental issues.
This is a very environmental riding. For my part, I've spent most of the last 30 years in environmental remediation, sustainability, and renewable energy. I feel very much that I can represent the environmental vote in Saanich-Gulf Islands, and I feel very confident that the voters of this riding will appreciate and support that experience.
You run this backwards.
Don't mess around.
He says a Liberal win would ensure this riding doesn't get left behind.
Well, in many ways, first and foremost, by taking Saanich-Gulf Islands to the governing side of the House, will give the opportunity for us to avail ourselves of funding, of legislative opportunities, an endless host of possibilities that could enrich and improve the life of Saanich-Gulf Islanders.
So you're saying a fourth place party really couldn't do that?
Oh, no. This is, it's very hard to reach the levers of power from the opposition bench. This is a place where to really make the biggest impact, you need to be at the caucus table. You need to be able to fight the battles for the constituents at the table where the decisions are being made.
Colin Plant is the NDP candidate in the riding. He's a high school teacher who served 3 terms as a local councillor. CPAC reached out to his campaign, but did not hear back.
I mean, it could be a good 4-way race. You know, it might be one of the true 4-way races in the country where Green, NDP, Conservatives, and Liberals all have good candidates.
This is certainly a riding to watch. I'm Laura Di Battista for CPAC.